How you doing, everybody? This is Jonathan King from the ClinchReport.com and PugilPix.com. If you've been to any fights in the Southern California scene, our next guest is definitely somebody you've seen. Coach Ian Harris from the Systems Training Center, inventor of Fight Science. Coach Ian, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Great, thanks for being a guest. Now, you've been in the game forever. Tell us about some of the fighters you've trained, a who's who of list of fighters.
Well, I've trained, I think probably the most notable guy that I brought from, that came to me the very first day was Chad George. And we had started PKG together back in the day. We were the first people at PKG, so we had a lot of people come through PKG. Not that I would take credit for, but I've trained with everybody from, Mac Danzig, Dan Hardy, all those guys that came through PKG. Trained with a lot of people. Trained with Greg Jackson back in the 90s. Yeah, so here, now that we're at Systems, we're building a group, Christos Giagos, John Robles, Terrion Ware. We're building a lot of Dmitry Gerasimov. We're building a lot of people from the ground up here. So that's a lot of people through the years. But I think right now is our most solid group of people that have just come out of nowhere.
Now, we were talking about a little earlier, you've been with the sport since the beginning, before they had gloves, before it was even called mixed martial arts. Right. It was called the Ultimate Beatdown or whatever the marketing guy would put the brand on it. Since you've seen the sport transition to where it's at now, where do you see the sport going? Do you see the sport ever becoming one of the top sports in the world?
Yeah, I think it's going to go up. Whether it's going to become like soccer is right now, or internationally, as we're seeing with the World Cup. I think it's still gonna. I think it's always going to be somewhat on the fringe because people aren't. I mean, you're beating the crap out of each other. I think that's going to be hard for a lot of people to deal with. Even boxing, which is nowhere near as complex necessarily because there's so many elements of MMA. But even boxing it's a huge sport, but it's not football. It's not soccer. So MMA, I think it's going to grow, but I don't think we're going to see that kind of level. Hopefully, maybe Olympics or some sort of more mainstream thing. But I think people don't understand it, and people who don't understand it, they think it's boring.
Right. How far away do you think we are from seeing mixed martial arts fighters being treated, paid like boxers are?
I think we're getting closer. I don't think we're ever going to be there. I just don't see it going to happen because it's a different sport. I think they're going to get paid a lot more, and I think we're already seeing that. You're seeing guys like GSP, you're seeing Anderson Silva, these people that are getting big sponsorships and making good money. But the difference is that boxing, I mean, Mayweather and Pacquiao, these guys own their own production. They own their own companies. They put on the fights. There's only a handful of people. There's a couple undercard fights, and then there's them. They're the fight you're seeing. A 12-round fight takes a long time. So that's the main event can take half an hour, whatever, however long it takes. MMA isn't that way. You need 20 fighters, 10 fights on a card. You're going to have 5, 6 fights on the main card plus undercard, and they don't own the organization. So they're always going to be employees. I don't think they're making. You're not going to own 60%, 100% of the pay-per-view revenue. That's why a guy like Floyd Mayweather can make $50 million because he gets all the pay-per-view.
He pays himself.
Yeah, he pays himself, exactly. So we're never going to see that, I don't think. But I think seeing people making millions and doing, I think the model is going to be more like professional football or professional baseball, where there's going to be stars that get paid the big contracts, and there's going to be the guys that are the journeymen. There's going to be the people that make the $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, and they're always going to be at that level, and there's going to be the breakout stars. And I think that's where we're going to see the difference. Is you're going to see the breakout stars making a lot more, and the base guys making a little bit more. That's where I think it's going to end up.
Now, at Systems, you guys have a bunch of breakout stars yourself. You touched on a few of them: Christos Giagos, Terrion Ware, John Robles, UFC fighter Pedro Munoz coming off a big win. In a year that you guys have been here, you're already producing some of the well, in California, the best well-known lighter weight fighters, and if you're the best well-known fighter in California, you're the best well-known fighter at that weight in the world, because we are the capital of MMA. Now, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, you seem to have a whole bunch of these lighter weight fighters. Is that by design?
No, I think it started just organically, and it's become that now, where we look for lighter weight fighters, and lighter weight fighters come to us because they know there's 30 people in the room that are all within their weight. But it started by accident. It was actually a running joke where I go, how is it possible that we can have 13 135ers in the room and nobody over 155, and 30 people in the room and 2 155ers and everybody else is under that. We don't even have a 170. And I think what happens, is when you get that big of a group, heavier weights come and they realize, well, there's nobody here to train with, and they go to a place that has bigger guys, and vice versa. Smaller guys, they go someplace else, and they're getting smashed around by 250-pound guys, and they go, I got to find a place that has training partners. So I think it eventually works its way out that way, and then we start, like I said, we start searching for finding people that don't have a home or that moved here, that are looking for something different, looking to step it up, and we recruit them. We say, hey, come on out, come and check it out. And I think when they get here, they realize, oh wow, this is a different kind of training, and it's with all these people that are my size, and then it ends up growing that way.
Now, some of the fighters in your amateur program, guys like Albert Morales, absolute beast. Are you growing these guys out back or something like that? How do you find these guys?
I think that is the one thing about being in Hawthorne. Hawthorne is, we're in LA, but we're not quite the South Bay, and we're not the West Side. So we're getting a lot of people that are kind of grew up tough. I mean, that's just the reality. Is Inglewood, Hawthorne, they're getting better, but they used to be the tough areas in LA. Right. So I think when you have that mentality, when people who are they grow up fighting, they grow up, tough guys, if they get away from that and they come and they dedicate themselves to a sport, they have heart, and they have that mentality of I'm going to fight my way out and fight my way to the top. And you get those people down here. And I'm not saying you can't get those people in other places. I mean, I've seen some of the toughest people in the world that are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and I don't know why they're so tough, but they are. But I think on generally speaking, that this kind of environment breeds tough people. And so being here in Hawthorne, we get people coming in off the street that are just like, I don't want to fight. And they're serious. If you signed them up that day to fight, they'd fight. They'd go get their butt kicked, but they wouldn't care. They'd fight. So we get these guys that come in here that are just natural fighters, because this is where, what else are they going to do,
Right. Now, my jiu-jitsu coach once told me one of the things that he looks for early on and when he's looking for a competitor is someone who's comfortable being beaten. He's in a bad situation and he's comfortable. Right. Freddie Roach once said, muscles don't mean anything. I'll take a guy with speed over muscle any day of the week. He looks for speed. What do you look for in raw talent as far as a fighter?
For me, it's mentality. I think the game is all about mentality, and I think that's where we're headed. Athleticism, of course, is going to be a huge role. You're seeing that, but back in the old days, it was karate versus jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu wins. Then you get these wrestlers who learn how to not get submitted, and then wrestlers were beating everybody. And then you get guys who learn how to not get taken down, Chuck Liddell, and they're knocking everybody out again. Then it goes back to the striker. Now you've got, name somebody in the UFC that doesn't know how to wrestle, that's not a purple belt, brown belt, black belt, that doesn't look like a boxer when they're hitting the pads. Everyone is good everywhere. So what makes the difference is your mentality and your athleticism. And I think for the most part, the mentality is the hardest part to get. You either have that or you don't. I've trained so many guys, we've all heard about gym fighters. I've trained so many gym fighters in my day where I just go, how is it possible that this person can wipe the floor with everybody and go in to a fight and break down mentally and lose to somebody who is supposed to be a gimme fight? I've seen it happen over and over and over. And it's something that gets to them. It's anxiety. It's the lights. It's the fear of losing in front of people. It's the fear of getting punched in the face. All these sort of things. It's the uncomfortableness of being in a situation that they've never been in before. In the gym, they're comfortable with these people. They're their friends. They get in there. I've never fought this guy before. and they get nervous. They can't hear their corner. They go back to their roots. They wrestle, they box, they brawl, they run, whatever their fight or flight response is. So for me, I look at people and I look at their fight or flight response. In their first fight, can they hear me? Are they understanding? Are they listening to what I say? When I put them in sparring, do they do what they're supposed to do? And can they respond to what I'm saying? If they can't respond and they're on autopilot, that person's got some kind of anxiety, something going on in their head, and we need to work on that. And the thing is that some people, they never get over that. Some people work on that and can get over it. And some people are just born without it. And we have a guy, Eric Steens, he also trains at PKG, my old gym, and he's back both places. He started fighting after 8 sessions. He had trained 8 times, once a week for 8 weeks, fought, lost, and then went 8-2 as an amateur. His only other loss was in the finals to Bill Cooper, a black belt, in the amateurs, and then he went 4-0 as a pro. So he was 8-2 and then 4-0 as a pro. With 0 training. He jumped in with and no wrestling, no nothing. He played football in high school, I think, but completely set on winning. His mind was he's comfortable. He's not afraid to be in there. He learns, and every week he puts in something that we taught him, and he'll do it. You'll see the fight, and you'll go, wow, he had the wherewithal to remember that drill that we did specifically for this opponent, and he was comfortable enough in the ring to go, okay, I can do this, and I'm gonna do this thing that we trained, and it's gonna work in my favor. And he's one of the only guys, Terrion Ware, Christos, some of these guys John Robles that you're seeing that we're talking about, they have that. They can be calm, a little bit of nerves to have that, to be ready to go, but they're calm in there, and they're not full of anxiety. They're not riddled with fear of something, and I think that's the biggest thing in fighting. So that's the hardest thing to pinpoint, though,
So it may be difficult to find, but at what point in time as a fighter do you think instinct is surpassed by intelligence, as far as like what you said with the fight or flight response? You don't really know how someone's going to react until they get punched in the face. Right. That can get you so far. It might be able to get you into the UFC. Right. But once you're there, at what point in a fighter's career does picking up on what the corner's saying surpass your instinct as far as what you're learning?
Well, I think there's always a balance of them. I think that, there's a point where game plan, I'm a big fan of game plan. Game plan always comes into play. You always want to look at your opponent. You want to break him down. You want to break down the fight and plan and train for that. For every fight is a different person. So every fight is a different fight. But when you get in there, you don't know that person hasn't been changing up what you don't know what's going to happen. The person who can go with the flow and doesn't freak out when that person doesn't do what they want, when their opponent doesn't do what they want to do, or when what they train doesn't work, they have to be able to, that's when instinct takes over. And you have to be able to just go into the next thing, move on, and change up your game plan, and stick with the overall idea of where you want to go with it. But nothing works out exactly the way we expect. That's very rare that we go, okay, you're going to come in, I'm going to throw a jab, cross hook, I'm going to take him down, I'm going to submit him. That rarely happens. So the best fighters are going to be the ones that are smart, intelligent, listen to their corner, going with the game plan, execute that, but can go with it when it changes up. I mean, and that's what jiu-jitsu is about. That's what we learn in jiu-jitsu or wrestling or anything that's chained together. It's being a step ahead, and if it doesn't go as planned, being able to adapt and get back onto a track that keeps you a step ahead in the other direction. That's what we're doing. But I find that those two things go hand in hand, because I found that the people that have the most heart, almost always the two characteristics that I find, they're intelligent, even if they're not book smart. They might be eighth grade education, but they're intelligent and they're rebellious. And I don't think the two of those. I think those go hand in hand, but I think they're not mutually exclusive. Like people who are intelligent and rebellious, they don't want to give up, and they're constantly thinking about what they need to do to stay ahead, and the whole rebelliousness to everything, to whatever it is. This person's not keeping me down. My parents, the government, my boss, whatever. That sort of rebelliousness goes into there. And when someone's on top of you and they're beating the crap out of you, and there is that rebellious state that just says, I'm not staying here. This guy's not getting one over on me. And those two things, like I said, that's a combination of instinct and intelligence that's the hard part to find. When you have somebody who has that, they can learn the skills as long as they're dedicated enough.
When you have that medley of characteristics that we're talking about, as a coach, at what point in time does that become evident where you say, this kid's got it? I mean, we talked a little earlier about, we called it American Top Team, we called it pad power. He's got pad power, but when you put him in a cage, it just doesn't work. At what point in time do you say, wait a minute, that's it right there, I see it?
You almost always see it in the first fight. Sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes you can see it, but in training. But training this is our comfort zone. We're all comfortable here. So in order to recreate that outside of the fight, it's going to another gym, sparring with people that you've never sparred with, bringing in a sparring partner from outside, bringing in a big name, bringing in somebody who they think, oh, this person's supposed to kick the crap out of me. Are you calm? Are you okay? Do you shy away from that person, or do you step up for that fight? Other than that, the only way is the first fight. You put them in there, and you immediately, you see it in the back. You see how they're breathing. You see how their heart rate, if their heart rate's out of control. You see the second they shut the cage and you say, hey, can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. If I got to say that 6 times, thumbs up if you can hear me, their focus is somewhere else. So one of the things I do with amateurs, I don't do it with all the pros. I think once you get to a certain level, like I said, it's less game plan and more instinct. But there's a thing that I do with all early fighters is I make them have an opening combination. So I make them train it all camp. And then what they do is when they touch gloves, within 10 seconds, they throw their opening combination. Not that I'm giving away secrets or anything, but whether it can be anything. It can be a double jab. It can be a 10-punch combination. I don't care what it is. But after you touch gloves, you got 10 seconds to throw your opening combination. So it does a couple things for me. It lets the fighter, everyone's nervous and tense until that first punch is thrown. And you see people circling for 30 seconds, and they get more and more tense and more tense. If you touch gloves, as soon as the punches are thrown, everything else goes away. And now you're in the fight. So it's starting the fight. It's also setting the pace. It's letting the other person know, I'm here to punch you first. You're getting off first. So it's the two things. I'm getting off first. I'm getting these nerves away. There's no more, the fight has now begun. There's no denying it. The cage door is closed. That's one big part where I get nervous, but it's not going to go away until that first punch is thrown. And the other thing is it lets me know that they are in the game and they remember what they've trained. If we do 8 weeks and every round they touch and go double jab cross, and the bell hits, the bell rings, and they go out there and they shoot for a double leg, I know right off the bat, okay, we got a head case. I got to get this guy calmed down. If he gets out of the first round, we have to figure out why he didn't do what he was supposed to do. So that's for me, it's to get them comfortable, but it's to let me know where that mindset is. And I can tell almost every time off that first fight in the first 10 seconds where your mind is. So that's what I do for, but it's hard to tell before then, I think,
Now, after the first round as a cornerman, how much of it is, I guess, referring to the game plan to make sure the fighter is sticking with the plan, and how much of it is stop doing this?
For me, I try to be, I'm not like Mr. Uber spiritual guy or anything, far from it, but I try to be positive as much as possible. But also everybody's different. I have fighters that'll tell you, Rob Fernandez, one of our guys, he was a really good amateur fighter, but he got in a bad car accident, he's had some health problems, so he hasn't been able to fight very much. But one of the prospects that I've been working with for 8 years, and he's still a great fighter, but we're trying to get him back on track. But he's one of these guys where, I have to tell him, I don't know what I can say here, but shut the F up and get back in there and fight, or, oh, I need this. No, you don't, shut up. Like, he's the kind of guy I can tell him, quit being a puss and get in there and do whatever. That's how I talk to him. Other people I have to coddle. Other people, you can't take that. Other people, it's got to be great. No, you're doing awesome. Now, what I need you to do is just do this. So it's always yes and. Yes, you're great, but let's do this instead of doing that. As opposed to don't get taken down. It's let's keep it on the feet. Or I want you to be more pressure instead of quit running away. Other people, I need to go, hey, quit running away and get in there and fight. Each person responds differently. And I think that's the key to being a good coach, or at least that's what I believe. What I try to work on is knowing the fighter and knowing their triggers and knowing knowing what makes what triggers their fight or flight, knowing what triggers their anxiety, knowing what triggers their motivation. Because everybody's different. You can't just go in and yell like the old movie coach. What are you guys doing? And get in there and do push-ups. Not everyone responds to that. Some people do. Some people don't. So, and every fighter is different. So the trick for me is to figure out what's working. And then in the first round, I mean, if they're doing everything they're supposed to do, then it's in the corners. Here's some water. Here's some ice. You need anything from me? Good. How you feeling? If they get cracked hard and I see on their face, I may ask them, so, how's this, what are you feeling? Say, oh, it hits hard. Nah, I want to know, sometimes I just ask them questions, like what is it, what's going on in there that you're feeling? And they'll tell me, oh no, I got this guy, I'm stronger than this guy. I hear that all the time. I thought this guy's gonna be stronger than me, but I'm stronger than him. Yeah, that's right, you're stronger than him, so let's muscle him down, whatever. Or, oh, this guy hits harder than I thought. Okay, well now I know you've got a little bit of fear. I'm afraid to get hit now. So now I can steer you away from, okay, let's not turn it into a brawl then. Right. Let's do something that takes away from that. So, like I said, everybody is different.
Now, you've been in, like you said earlier, you've been in the game for a long time. Joe Rogan, UFC commentators, been one to say that if you want your kid to be a mixed martial artist or you think he's got a proclivity to be a fighter, get him in a wrestling room. When I was first starting, we would always say, hey, what do you train? Oh, I'm Muay Thai, I'm Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now people are saying, I train MMA as a discipline itself. Would you recommend to a kid to go into an MMA gym, or would you still recommend to pick a particular discipline for a few years to stick with it? And if so, what discipline would that be?
I kind of think they don't need to start. I don't think kids need to start beating the crap out of each other when they're young. I mean, their brains are still forming. You can learn how to box or kickbox efficiently for MMA within a relatively short period of time. It's not like jiu-jitsu. It doesn't take 10 years. Jiu-jitsu, to get proficient, it takes 4 or 5 years. I mean, you can be good in 2, 3, but to get a black belt, it's taking you 10 years on average.
One that's not bought, anyway.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, shoot, I'm still a brown belt, and I've been doing jiu-jitsu since '96. That's 18 years. But again, it's not 100% consistent. I'm not doing it every single day because I'm coaching people. But it takes a long time to learn the ground. So, but wrestling, if you have that, the first year of jiu-jitsu is getting your body, learning how your body works, learning your balance, learning your base. That's why wrestlers do so well. They come in and they've already got that part down. Now all they need to do is learn how to submit people and not get submitted. The positions are the body mechanics of staying on top and controlling your weight and controlling your opponent's weight. You already did that in wrestling. So I think wrestling is a great base. Or jiu-jitsu. The problem is, I think there's problems on all the way around. I would say wrestling and jiu-jitsu. If you can do jiu-jitsu on the weekends or go to a jiu-jitsu class a couple nights a week and wrestle in school, because you've got junior high wrestling, high school wrestling. If you can do that and do jiu-jitsu at the same time, I think that is the base to be. Because I find that people who do jiu-jitsu, they get in a lot of times, they don't know how to wrestle, and they end up going to jiu-jitsu. They go to jiu-jitsu mode. And I see wrestlers that they're great wrestlers, but the fight comes and that's their comfort zone, and they wrestle, even though they know jiu-jitsu, they wrestle and put their head and stuff. They go back into their comfort zone, which is wrestling. We're always going to go back to our comfort zone when we get riled or when we get anxiety. So for me, the comfort zone's got to be the first couple things you trained, right? Some people, their comfort zone is brawling. That's their flight. People say fight or flight. Sometimes your flight is to brawl. If that's what you grew up in, that's your flight. Like, you go on autopilot and you brawl. It doesn't mean you always run. Flight just means going to something that you're on autopilot. And wrestlers will wrestle if they get flustered. Jiu-jitsu guys will go to jiu-jitsu if they get flustered. I mean, how many times have we seen great guys who just don't know what to do and they drop to their back and they do this, and the other guy goes, I'm not gonna go to your guard. Why would I do that? And the crowd's going, what is this guy doing? He's frustrated. He doesn't know what else to do. Same thing with wrestlers. They don't know what to do. They just start shooting and shooting and shooting. They get sloppy. They don't set it up. They get kneed in the face. So to me, ground is the hardest stuff to do. So you should, do both those and then worry about getting punched in the face when your brain's formed and
Now, we got a lot of fights coming up for the systems guys. You also had a tragedy recently with the passing of Dee Boyce. Maybe touch on that, how that tragedy affected the dynamic in the gym.
Well, this gym is very it's very much a family. Like everybody here hangs out together. They go on trips together. A couple people, there's roommates, people have moved in together. There's people dating on the team. You know what I mean? That's how our family. It's very much a family, and you hear that all the time. Every gym goes, oh, we're like a family, and then after a few months of training there, you're like, no, we're not, because in a dysfunctional family, because that guy hates that guy, and that guy's a jerk, and that guy's got an ego, and no matter where you go, you always hear that. This is the only place I've ever been where I feel that's really the case. People get along, and we weed you out. We don't care if you could be Chuck Liddell or Anderson Silva or BJ Penn or whoever. If you don't gel, we don't want you here. And I think that helps make people want it. So we haven't really kicked anybody out yet because everyone goes, wow, this is great. I'm going to leave my ego at the door and be here. So yeah, when D died, it was like, he's one of those guys that the nicest guy you could ever want to meet. Same thing, troubled, had troubled past. Grew up, in I think like the Inglewood area, and they grew up in this area, and grew up with tough time, and when he was completely straight, here all the time. As a matter of fact, I think he might have been coming to the gym to work out when he got hit, and completely removed from all that his past stuff. And you always think that that's, if something's going to happen, it's somebody who's still messing around with stuff they shouldn't be messing around with. Not the case with him. So it was pretty bad. It was pretty tragic for everybody here because it was a guy who was a lot of potential, always there for everybody, nice guy, just doing everything you're supposed to do to better yourself from a bad situation, and complete randomness that you just makes you. I think it put a lot of perspective on it. Like I think a few people realized, wow, there's no rhyme or reason to this. Like you can go at any time, and it's not necessarily up to you. Sometimes it's just being in the wrong place at the right time at the wrong time, and I think it brought a lot of people closer already that were already close. But it was tough. I mean, I've never seen so many tough people crying for weeks. And myself included. I had a fight, and they did 2 fights in a row. They did something to him, for him. The RFA
and U of MMA.
U of MMA, RFA, Spar Star. They put something up, and a month later, I'd see in the memory of D on the RFA, on the RFA cage, or the pictures they did for U of MMA, and I just start crying, and I'm like, wow, this is like you don't realize how much it affects them. For me, all these guys, they're like kids to me. I'm older than everybody, and I feel like I'm equal, but I also feel like kind of a father figure to everybody here. And yeah, so it was really tough, and it really affected everybody. And but that's what I said. We work together, we fight together. I mean, we have 10 fights coming up. We have 4 days in a row: the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th of August. And we have 10 or 12 people or something fighting in those 4 days. It's crazy.
You're building champions too. I mean, Albert Morales is an amateur champion. Terrion Ware is the Bama champion. Christos Giagos is now the Tachi champion. Terrion's also fighting for the Tachi belt coming up. So you guys are building a lot of things here. And despite the tragedy with D, he may be an angel on your shoulder because you guys have been rolling along since then. So now. You mentioned we have a couple fights coming up in August. I asked Marcus the same question, and I'll ask you. We're now here 1 year after your 1 year anniversary here at Systems. When we're sitting down here next year, what's going to be different?
I think we're going to have, my feeling is that both Terrion and Christos are 100% going to be in the UFC. Win or lose their next fights, by then they'll be in. But I know when they win their next fights, they'll be in. That's a done deal. Who else is there to fight? You're 12-2 with 10 straight wins, and you just beat Joe Soto. You're 10-2, and you're the Tachi champion and the RFA champion. Who else are you going to fight? So those guys are going to be in the UFC, and I'm hoping they're going to be there for a long time. And I think there's a good chance John Robles is on his way. Jared Carlston, another guy, is on his way. So, and I think I don't think a lot's going to change. I think almost everybody who's here now is still here, if not everybody. Plus you know, the more notoriety, hopefully the more we have. Our team hopefully has grown, and we've got 3-4 people in the UFC. And I'm going to say right now, Pedro Munoz, and the only reason I didn't throw him up there up front is because he's a Black House guy, and he's our jiu-jitsu coach, and I don't like, you know,
laying claim to a fighter, right?
Right, exactly. Although Pedro is, you know, he's my jiu-jitsu coach now, and he trains with us MMA, and he's the most open guy. Like he'll take, you could be a white belt and he'll learn from you. He's one of those guys. He's not closed-minded. He's so coachable. He's not closed-minded. He listens to what you have to say, and he doesn't need to. He's got people. He can get any coach he wants. He's got, you know, Rafael Cordero, and he's got the, you know, Kenny over Blackhouse. He's got all these people, and he's willing to come here and learn and listen to me and take me to fights to corner him. And, you know, he doesn't have to do any of that sort of stuff, but it just shows how open he is. And he's already extremely talented. A guy like that, he's gonna be top 5 by next year. I mean, he already beat the number one. I mean, not beat, but he took the number one contender out of his fight. He lost that fight to, you know, on 12 days' notice to Rafael Sunsao, and he put a hurting on him. He hurt his ribs, and that's the only reason he didn't fight for that title. So
Jiu-jitsu guy coming off a TKO win also is big. So
yeah, he looked so good in that fight. I mean, so I think he's going to be top 10 soon. Another fight or two, they're going to be putting him in the top 10, and I think within a year he could easily be top 5. He's got the potential to do it, and he's got the right attitude, and he's got no ego. He's everything you want in a fighter. You know, mentally there, physically, he's dedicated. You know, hungry. So we're gonna see big things from him.
Excellent. All right, it's always a pleasure to talk MMA with someone who I consider to be a legend in the sport, a guy who's been around forever, and I consider him to be a scientist. So thanks for sitting down, Coach Ian Harris from Systems Training Center.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate it.